Our next speaker is PETR NÁVRAT. He will be talking about how to do participatory planning in the best way possible. He might also talk about the fact that we might not even need to use this terminology. And he will also mention why it makes sense to do participatory planning. So Petr Návrat is actually the author of the Prague's Manual for Participatory Planning. Unfortunately, he needs to leave at 3 sharp, and he has prepared not only a speech, but actually also an interactive workshop. And we also need to fit in a Q&A. So, Petr, let's start. I think that if we start, we will lure more people in. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Petr Návrat. I am from the On Plan studio. It's a design and planning studio. And when I joined this conference this morning, I was actually wondering, why am I here? Because tactical urbanism is not something I've ever dealt with. So I hope that I can still offer something useful and something that you can draw inspiration from. I actually also try to revolt against talking about participation, but as you can see, I haven't been successful. So yes, my presentation today is about participation. Why is that? Back in 2004 or 2015, I approached the head of the Institute of Planning and Development, and I felt that I would like to do something for Prague and its urban development. And what he told me back then was that there is no participatory planning and people don't really know how to go about it, and that I might maybe help with that. So I decided to start with that, and we established the Office of Participation, and it is now presided over by Milan Brdlik, and it includes a lot of really skilled people. And so that's why I'm labeled probably for forever as the person who does participatory planning, and that's exactly why I wasn't really successful in persuading the organizers to talk about something else. Those of you who are here and you represent city councils, municipalities, raise your hand, please. Do we have any architects or urban planners? Raise your hand, please. It's interesting that they are clustered on the sides. Probably all are introverted. Do we have anyone else? Somebody who is not an architect, somebody who is not working for a municipality, but is engaged in a different way in city development? Wonderful, thank you. Do we have any developers here? No. Well, that's interesting. How about politicians? Okay. That's brave of you to admit this. I think that we all know a lot about participation in urban development. We've been talking about it for the past 10 years. Before there was nothing, and maybe now there might even be too much. I would like to be relevant with my presentation. I would hate to be irrelevant. So I would like to ask you what you want to learn today from me. And in the next 25 minutes, I will try to give you answers. I know how hard it is to raise your hand and being the first person to speak, but please tell me, what are you interested in when it comes to participation? I can maybe repeat after you, or please use the microphone. So, what would you like to learn about participation? I think that now participation does happen, but for me, the question is where to draw the line. If you organize the participatory process, you have certain goals, and then you ask other stakeholders for input. You ask them for feedback. But I feel that very often we don't know how to really go about the participatory process so that you lose the sight of your goal. Yeah, exactly. I feel that you are the one coming up with a project and then you want to respond to the voice from the people, and so you lose your initial goal actually. Yes, thank you very much for this. Another question? My problem is that participation on paper is something that I really like, but in reality, not really. How to make sure that participation doesn't really turn into a referendum of all crazy pots around? Is there a methodology for how to do the participatory project for a small city that can't really afford a specialist to run it for them? So I'm putting all this down. So methodology for a small city, and the question before was how to not get derailed by a very vocal minority. Any other questions? Coming from the right, the microphone is already there. Okay, no, we turn our attention here. So how do you stimulate participation? What do you mean exactly? How do you start? Well, what I mean is how to make people come. How do you make them participate? Because sometimes I feel that they might want to do it, but then they actually don't. So how about this introverted group over here? Any questions? Good, you are not hopeless. I really wonder where is the line between participation and manipulation? And another question, but let me put it down. I'm interested in the legitimacy of the participatory process and also the legitimacy of people who have been elected. Thank you. Maybe two more inputs. Probably shouldn't have said that. How much does it influence the quality of the participation process? What questions you ask and how you ask them?
I encourage you to raise your hand as well. Yes.
So I want to ask, how can you ensure diversity? So you obviously don't want the participation to be just a small group, to include kids, elderly, minorities, stuff like that.
That's an excellent question. Thank you. One more. A myslím, že tam byl ještě někde, ne?
I believe that there was another question from over here. Do you really think that during the participation process people should say what they want rather than how to go about it? Wonderful. I hope that everybody's been heard who wanted to ask their questions. We have about 20 minutes left, so I will try to use this time to answer those questions. What I feel is wonderful is that we already have great amount of know-how. There is the Office of Participation at the Institute of Planning and Development. And back when I was still a part of this office, we created a manual of participation. You can download it for free. It has about 100 pages. And I actually have to say it really is very good because we draw inspiration from what already works in other parts of the world. And it describes different approaches to participation and also different scenarios for different types of planning processes. So there is different methodology if we want people to participate in creating an urban plan, but you can also have a methodology there for individual projects. So for example, a project involving the transformation of public spaces. So there might be a different approach to participation when it comes to such a project as opposed to developing an entire urban plan. And here you have the process outlined from the very first step to the conclusion of the project when everything has been constructed and people can start using it. There is also a separate part of the manual dedicated to communication, and then there are references to individual methodologies that you can use. And there are dozens of methods, there are dozens of approaches, and in the manual we try to link them to projects for which they are the most relevant, but also we try to show how time-consuming and demanding they are to carry out. So, for example, one of the methods that you can use to encourage participation is to have an open doors day. And here you have tips how to prepare it and how to organize it. Sometimes people say that no participation is actually better than bad participation. What often happens is that people underestimate how much effort it takes and how well organized it needs to be. And that's also why very often participation is outsourced to a professional. There was a question of diversity. So let's say that you need to get inputs from cyclists. Well, take them for a cycling trip. For example, this is a part of Prague in the district of Vinohrady. We wanted to take the local cyclists through this area, and we made regular stops every 100, 200 meters and evaluated what works rather than what doesn't work. That was unfortunately the case, so that the designer working on revitalizing the street could take it into account. How to approach participation? There is an easy way to think about it. Think about it in two stages. The first stage is when you, as a architect or a urban planner or a person from the municipality, you need to analyze the area. You need to find out as much as possible about the area you are planning to refurbish. And at this stage, you need to understand how people use the area, how people experience it, what they appreciate about it, but also what they feel is lacking, what value this area has for them. And the value can be an old church, it can be a wonderful grown tree, it can be an interesting vista. And so you involve people in analyzing the area. And then you have several options. Well, what you absolutely need to do is to inform about what you are planning to do. You can do it through an exhibition so that your people know what is happening, and you can also use this to explain how they can participate and when. It is important, if you have a vision, not to get it derailed too much, but at the same time you need to set up a schedule and stick to the schedule and not prolong the process too much. Discussion is welcome, not only about the area, but also maybe about the whole vision for the project and the process itself as well. So this is a project in the part of Prague called Palmovka. We worked on it in 2017, 2018. I actually approached the architect just the other day, and they already have a building permit for this project. So finally, there will be a proper square at this location in Prague. We actually built a whole brand around this project, and we had a dedicated website. We wanted to show that this location can really be a very nice and valuable part of the town. We wanted to show that it's filled with interesting places, with cultural spots, with good restaurants, and that it deserves this great public space. Another way to encourage people to participate is to take a walk with somebody who comments on the project. So it's a guided tour, basically, and people just can take part. They don't need to be very active. A staple for us when it comes to participation is a community meeting looking at a map. It's a very easy way to get input. You might spend 2 hours with the people sitting around the map, and it can really be a very diverse group of people who live in the area. If we have a bigger group, we divide them into smaller ones. I think that the most per group is 12 people, so that we can really listen to everybody. And then I will show you what the outcome of such a discussion can be. So guided tours, I've already mentioned. And somebody also mentioned children. I think that if you are refurbishing a bigger area that impacts young people, children, schools, you can also involve schools. So you can actually use their school time to ask them how they use the area, what they would appreciate. You can ask them to take a picture of a place that they like, of the features that they don't like. They can present these during the class, and that stimulates discussion and makes them want to participate, and also their parents. So as a result, this can really catalyze a broader discussion about the place. You can also do surveys. And in the survey, you can ask open questions to get your inputs. You can also, rather than using a form, you can do a sociological survey. And a sociological survey means that you have a representative sample of your respondents. And that's the only tool to make sure that your sample really reflects the population and the community there. So the data is not skewed by who is active in the participatory process. As far as I remember, we've only done it once, this type of survey, because there we definitely wanted to have a representative sample of the Prague population. So we couldn't use a form. We outsourced it to a survey agency, and they called people and had interviews with them. This was the case for the project of the Masaryk railway hub and the surrounding area. And you might now be wondering, why do you just use basic surveys if then it's not a representative sample? I think that it still is valuable to get this data. And I think that in this first analytical stage, what you are interested in is the quality of the information rather than the quantity. So you want the inputs, you want the data, you also want the discussion, also with experts. So this is a picture from an architectural competition and a discussion that was a part of it. So there were representatives from the municipality, for example, from the transport department. The panel also included representatives from this institute, from the developer, and it can be a very open discussion about the location under development. And you can record it. You can then put the video on the website of the project so that people can refer to it, and anyone can watch it if they want to understand what the project is about and what are all the factors that were taken into account when the project was conceived. Then there is an application that was developed by a Finnish company, and it enabled people to react to the space, to react to the area in real time. So the respondents could use the app to track how they walk through the area, how they move through the area, and this was a very valuable source of data. Because thanks to having this data, we could see that people not only use this main thoroughfare, but they want to also go across. People basically wanted shortcuts throughout the area. So this is this is still the analytical stage. So before the architect or the designer even starts with a first draft, and then there is the design phase. We do different types of consultations. What you can do is that you exhibit your design. Very often, you might also have time slots when the architects are present so that they can comment, they can answer questions, and they can also listen to the inputs from the participants. This was a panel discussion with local people in the Palmovka district. And we asked specific representatives of different stakeholders. And at this stage, they usually ask more specific questions, and you can provide more specific answers. The participatory process is about building trust. It's about building trust between the community and the designers and the developers. You can also use a website, a web platform to gather input. When you already have a design, usually you have a standardized form. And you also need to be very transparent about how far the consultation can go, basically which parts of the projects are already set in stone because of technical standards and things like that, and which parts of the projects are still open for discussion. So this is something that you need to communicate upfront. You need to say to people, this is something that can't be discussed. We don't really can accept your input for this because this is already locked in. This is not going to be changed, whatever is the opinion, because, for example, for technical standards or the zoning plan or the urban plan. So you need to be very open about this. What works is using the place that features in the project to actually communicate the project. What we like to do is to show rather pictures than visualization, because sometimes visualization tends to almost look like reality. They are too realistic, and then people can be actually disappointed when they see the real-life finished building. That's, for example, what they do in Switzerland when they have architectural competitions. They ask for all sketches and visualization to be just black and white. Then there is a wonderful inspiration from a London-based studio. They produce what they call a place book, which is a brochure providing an overview of the area, what is the value of the area, what is the vision for the renovation, how the public has been consulted. So this is, for example, for Pardubice and for the renovation of the automatic mills building. we need to realize that organizing such a participatory process requires certain skills. We were approached a couple of years back by the city of Brno, and they asked us to train all the employees of all the municipal departments who create projects and design projects and engage with the public. So we organized a workshop for them. It was a 5-day workshop attended by people from the transport department, the education department, the greening department, so very diverse. And we had a model project for them involving the redesign of parking spaces in Brno. And we also did a shorter workshop for other municipalities, just a 1-day workshop. What I would also like to share is a good method that is used in Germany. So let's say that you already have a project, and it can be a tactical urbanism project. And this project then is a part of a broader vision. And for the vision to be actually made reality, you need many different pieces, many individual projects. So what they call it is an integrated strategy. And I would like to demonstrate it on this one example. It's a small municipality, 3,000 inhabitants. The name is Nelahozeves. And what was wonderful about this project that it was a public-private partnership. In this village, there is the birthplace of the famous Czech composer Antonín Dvořák, and also a chateau. So there are tourists. There are plans to renovate the birthplace of Antonín Dvořák. And what the village also needed is to have a better public space, not only for the locals, but also for tourists. And when we talk about tourists, not everybody comes by train. So also to somehow regulate individual car transport, and also to think about parking. So for example, this street, it's too big for the amount of cars that you get in this area. So we use the abbreviation ISUR, Integrated Strategy for Urban Development. So what do? You decide what area you want to work with and how, and you build it piece by piece. And some of those pieces, some of the projects can be funded from the municipal budget, some can be privately funded. And this is a picture from a round table about the future plans. When you have this meeting, the important thing is to factor in what was raised during the debate into the map. So you show people the map, the original version, and also the version that was adjusted based on their input. And of course, if you have 5 different tables talking, they can come with contradictory ideas. But that's actually beneficial as well, because sometimes it helps people realize that they don't even agree on how they perceive the status quo. And that actually helps them realize that when it comes to the future of the area, there also needs to be a consensus, and not everybody might be 100% satisfied with the end result. So during this project, we focus on public facilities. There is a school, there is the birthplace of Antonín Dvořák. And again, we prefer to use drawings or illustrations rather than visualizations or photos. And what we want people to see is that there is the overall vision, and to achieve it, we go step by step through individual projects. And some of the projects can be temporary interventions, that's something that we can start with. So that brings me to tactical urbanism. But already the project is designed in a way that one day it can become permanent, and it can become a permanent part of this newly designed area. Here you see a couple of examples of those individual projects that make up the whole. So changes in how the transport is routed through the village. And this is a vision of the central square. Maybe to conclude, I'd like to say the following, and hopefully I will also answer some of the questions that I haven't answered yet. So what are your opportunities when you run this participatory project? The local people have know-how, they have knowledge, they know about the status quo, so you can gain a lot, you can learn a lot. Urban planning is political, so there inevitably will be conflicts, there are sometimes contradictory interests, different stakeholders have different needs and priorities. And if you do this participation process, you find out what these are very early on. So that's also a good thing. If you involve people in the analytical stage, then whatever you design has greater legitimacy. People already feel ownership of it because they were involved in co-creating it. And then there are long-term opportunities. Every participatory process contributes to a healthy, active civil society. When you do first such participation, people might be hesitant. They don't know what to expect. They don't know what is expected. But if you come back and do it second, third, fifth time, people already know how to go about it. So it stimulates dialogue. It teaches people how to talk, how to discuss, that you can't really shout at your opponent because that achieves nothing. So it also builds skills that are important for a healthy democracy. What are the limits of participatory processes? One of them has been mentioned already. That's the question of how representative these are. If you don't have a representative sample and 100% and 100 people says yes, I agree, and 20 people say no, I don't, it's not really representative. And I hope that I have now time for a funny story. We were working in the city of Rokytnice, and we were discussing the changes over a map, and suddenly we were joined by a group of young people, and they dispersed among those different tables. And they said, we are from the basketball team and we want a new basketball court. And we sent 2 people to each of the tables so that this is raised by every table. So yes, this is not very representative. Also, you need to do it efficiently. You can't go back to the same question over and over and over again because, yes, you could do that forever. So from the very beginning, you need to have a schedule. You need to tell people when to participate, how, what the deadlines are. There was also a question, what is the difference between legitimacy based on a participatory process and legitimacy based on elections? I think that sometimes it happens in Czechia that politicians tend to basically push the need to make a decision by doing the participation. What we never do is start a participatory project if we don't have a green light from the politicians. So you first need to get your yes from the politicians. Only then can we start asking people what they think. Participatory process can be a way to avoid making a decision. Politicians can't just do it to somehow push the need to make a decision further to the future. So first, they need to make their decision. They need to say what they want, and then you can start the participatory process. When I was still working here in the institute, we did an online survey, and that was definitely not representative because suddenly we received tons of responses by auto enthusiasts. None of them actually lived in Prague, and they all said that we need wider streets, we need higher speed limits and things like that. Yes, so anything can be misused.
Petře, děkuji, protože...
Thank you, Petra. We don't have any time. We're behind. Any questions from the audience? Very fast questions. I'd like to ask if you have a way to measure the rate of success of your work. Do you evaluate your projects post-realization, post-implementation? Are you able to say, okay, here we were very successful with participation and here we were less successful? Well, it depends on the type of project. If you have a vision for the development of the center of a small town, it's different than just revitalizing one street. You can measure it by the success of businesses there. In Nelahoseves, a small town, they just opened a new business. The house where the famous Czech composer Antonín Dvořák was born will have a cafe there now. And the most important thing for us is checking in with the town, say 5 years later. We come back and we ask the people, like, are the rents coming up, which is great for homeowners? Are sales going up? Are the different groups of users happy? We ask about these things. I don't know if that answers your question. Yes, Petr, good luck in your future endeavors. We're very happy that you stayed here with us, even though we're running late. Thank you. A big round of applause for Petr and his topic.